plays into advancing our broader energy efficiency work and connecting with residents, businesses, industry in advancing energy efficiency outcomes. So today's panel, the general public has limited knowledge of energy efficiency. It is perceived as more of an abstract concept, really, than a real life solution. And today's panel will focus on exactly what energy efficiency can do for consumers and how to create campaigns that generate results, drive energy efficiency program uptake, drive energy cost savings, energy use reduction, and greenhouse gas emission reductions. We have three panelists today. First, we'll be hearing from Charles Paullin, who is a Virginia correspondent with InsideClimateNews. Charles is a Richmond-based reporter focusing on energy and environmental issues. He's won several awards for his work covering state policy, particularly with the Virginia Mercury and local news in Northern Virginia. His first reporting gig was with, I think, the New Britain Herald in Connecticut, and after attending the University of Hartford, where he studied sports journalism. We'll also be hearing from Rad Tollet. Rad is an acclaimed brand, content, and digital product strategist based in Richmond, Virginia, and he has over 2 decades of experience guiding top brands through pivotal growth and repositioning efforts. He has led strategy at renowned marketing and ad and digital product strategy agencies, helping shape campaigns for clients such as Delta, Verizon, Google, AT&T, and many other large corporations. He holds a master's from VCU and a bachelor of journalism from the University of Missouri, and currently heads Rad Tollet, his own creative ad agency and strategy agency, and working with many startups and Fortune 500 companies. We're also going to hear from Jake Barnet, who is an energy and climate analyst with ClearlyEnergy. He specializes in driving innovative solutions for energy policy and sustainability. He holds a BA in environmental studies from the University of Richmond, a graduate certificate in financing and deploying clean energy from Yale University, and he's currently pursuing a Master of Science in Energy Policy and Climate at Johns Hopkins University. He leverages analytical expertise and a collaborative mindset to help organizations navigate the evolving energy landscape and advance climate positive outcomes. My name is Bill Eger, and I will be serving as today's moderator. I'm founder and principal of ETHOS Sustainability, a local energy transition strategy firm working in Virginia in the Mid-Atlantic. I also have the privilege of serving on the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council board and currently serve as VAEEC's secretary. With that said, I think we have first up Charlie Paullin to discuss his work, and particularly in leveraging journalism to advance energy efficiency outcomes. I'll pass it over to you, Charlie.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Bill. Good to be on a panel with you. I have watched you on a couple others. So I'm happy to be here. As a journalist, I guess I'll try and provide like a general overview of how I approach writing some of my stories about energy, environment issues, and energy efficiency in particular. I guess I'll throw out a standard disclosure. I don't necessarily advocate for one technology over the other, but certainly am interested in ways to keep bills affordable and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and all that. I guess starting with where to begin with all this, I guess generally there's always a topic of interest. And just like with anything, it kind of helps to have a big plan for how you're going to craft your message. I often think about this as like drafting like a blueprint for a house or like a coffee table, some sort of project. And one of the key things to do at the start is identify that clear message you want to get across, and let that be your thread, your through line for the rest of your messaging. And in journalism and news writing, we call this like the nut graph. It's very high up. It's usually the second or third paragraph, and it clearly explains, the thrust, the topics you're going to cover, what the issue is that you're going to cover throughout the story, and then you go on to talk about those issues. So I guess in some sense, if you're building a social media campaign or writing a blog or creating email newsletters or just material to give to people. This could be, this is a helpful first step to kind of understand what it is you want to get across, and organize all your thoughts, um, to convey that one key message. And I guess one thing to keep in mind that we always practice, my former editor taught me, was think about how you would explain this to your grandma. High up, try to keep it very general, very digestible, very understandable. This stuff can get pretty wonky pretty fast. And it's cool and interesting to a lot of people. Some other people may not have the capacity to understand it. So, if you're talking to your grandma, as some people may know, you got to talk a little bit slow, maybe, and spell things out a little bit more. So that's something to keep in mind. I guess next slide. So I guess I bring up this as one example of energy efficiency topic that I've written about before. It's with my former outlet, the Virginia Mercury. It was about RGGI. As I'm sure a lot of people know, it's the carbon market that Virginia was a part of before the governor, Glenn Youngkin, pulled us out, and we're still out pending an appeal process that could be starting pretty soon. I guess I'll have to follow up on that. But this kind of really talked about funding for energy efficiency. And the end goal is to make bills affordable, from what I understand, and reduce energy generation needs. There's a lot of other experts throughout this whole panel that could probably speak to some of the intricacies of this. But I guess that is, how I would explain it to my grandma is energy efficiency is a way to make your bills more affordable. And that is like a direct link to people that people are concerned about. Thanks, Everett. I guess I spoke with Everett for the piece, I should say. And I guess making that direct connection with people is a way to help them get invested, of course, and really listen and tune in and follow along with what it is you might be talking about, whether it's a insulation upgrade that you could provide or like a new windows or anything. Again, there's more experts here that could talk about that. But that brings them along with you. And I guess in a similar sense, it humanizes it. And if you are crafting maybe a greater campaign, kind of making it people focused is a way to keep them with you. And it creates like a character for people to follow versus, when they hear like R31 insulation or something, what is that? And it might be a little too abstract, but if they hear about somebody who is saving $20 a month on a bill, again, that dollar signs speak loudly to people, that might draw them in. And I guess from there, you can kind of talk about how this program, the weatherization deferral program that was funded by RGGI, kind of set up homes to take on energy efficiency upgrades. And that's where it can get a little complicated about like different types of work maybe, but the end goal of the program is to make your utility bills affordable again through these upgrades. So keeping that first message that you want to craft in mind throughout everything is very helpful. Next slide. So after you've kind of, explained everything and introduced your characters, I'd say read the story. Also read Inside Climate News' stories too. They've got good characters that you can follow along with. It's good to provide some data to back it up. Here's a chart that I threw into the article that I included with the article, kind of showing the issue with energy burden, which I'm sure a lot of people may know about. And if you don't, it's how much of like your utility bill or your income goes toward your utility bill, and how much that may burden you, that may saddle you and your costs and your expenses based on your income. And I include this map because I thought it was pretty telling to show like there's a lot of people that are dealing with it. Of course, you can kind of look at the different areas and kind of see where there may be some key opportunities. But this would kind of reinforce the message of like this is a problem or this is an issue, and there are opportunities to take advantage of here with energy efficiency upgrades. I'll say personally, I had a renewal by Anderson person come by my house and gave us a pitch about Windows, and he shared the technology that they have with the triple pane window, I guess, material. I'm sure there's a better term for that. But he showed us the differences between the temperature when it was just through a regular single pane piece of glass, and then this triple pane piece of glass. Please somebody correct me if there's a better way for that to say that. And there was a drastic temperature difference. And it was, yeah, it made me go, wow. I'm sure there's pros and cons to the technology that are worth exploring as well. But that was sort of like a real evidence-based way of showing how beneficial some of these upgrades can be because I guess if the window is reflecting more sunlight, there's less heat getting into the house, and that means you have to run your air conditioning a little bit less. You don't have to make it as cold to maintain a comfortable temperature so often, and that will really reduce your electricity bill and make your living situation a little bit more affordable. So again, that was kind of my way of tying it back to the overall message. And I guess if you are highlighting certain people, like maybe past customers who have benefited from your work, tying it back to them and kind of closing the full loop, coming full circle on your story can really kind of help drive it home. And then from there, once people have an understanding, you can talk about some other stuff if you want, like other technologies. I might talk about, Clean Economy Act energy efficiency targets that, Dominion may not be hitting, and why that matters. So kind of get their foot in the door, make it digestible, and make it personal, make a connection with them, and then the world's your oyster in a sense, hopefully. And I think that's, yeah, everything.
Great. Well, thanks, Charlie. And thanks for laying out kind of the journalistic approach to kind of distilling many of these kind of complex topics. And we'll come back to kind of broach the subject a little bit more towards the end with a question and answer session and learn more about some of your work at Inside Climate News and maybe other ways to frame energy efficiency within the context of Virginia. So with that, thank you. And we'll move on right now next to Jake Barnet, who again is an energy and climate analyst with ClearlyEnergy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you, Charles. I think you provided a lot of helpful context that I think I'll try to touch on as we kind of go through my slides as well. I went to the University of Richmond and actually attended this conference a couple of years ago in person, so now it's kind of full circle to be able to present at it. I have been at ClearlyEnergy now for almost 2 years. I work on our kind of residential solutions, supporting all of that. We also work on the commercial side as well as support kind of climate finance, helping lenders identify their greenhouse gas emissions in their portfolio. But most of the work that we do would be on the residential and commercial side. On the residential side, we support various different home energy assessment applications as well as programs trying to facilitate greater adoption of home energy retrofits, so providing software solutions for homeowners, program implementers alike. And then on the large multifamily jurisdictional side, we support building performance standard and benchmarking programs through our BEAM tool. So I'll be talking about both of those initiatives today. Next slide, please. So if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, the Remotely tool is a virtual energy assessment application that we developed with initial funding from NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and then over the last couple of years through SBIR funding, Small Business Innovation Research Award funding from the Department of Energy. So the application that you can see is kind of the one on the right-hand side of the remotely text. It's a smartphone-based application that's designed to remedy the traditional challenges of home energy assessments, that being high costs, delays, data collection, difficulties, a time-consuming process. And as Charles said, it can be difficult to visualize and kind of contextualize some of this information for a homeowner. I think what we've seen in our work is the kind of the lack of energy literacy in this space, and using different tools like remotely to facilitate greater energy literacy is kind of a win-win for homeowners as well as jurisdictional partners, implementers, excuse me, utilities alike. So there's kind of a holistic realm of interconnection that can be made by using various digital tools. So remotely, as I said, was a DOE-funded project over the past couple of years. A home energy assessor can now use the remotely tool to generate an official home energy score. So if you are a certified home energy score assessor, you can go into a home and use the remotely to expedite your data collection process. We've worked with various different home assessors that have found it takes about a third of the time as a traditional assessment. A lot of that is found kind of the data aggregation and collection aspect where everything is in one place. You're able to share files, disseminate it, connect to different APIs and all of that kind of tangential work so that it is able to reduce the time in the home as well as expedite the data collection and data sharing process. If you're a homeowner, you're still able to use the tool. So you could use the tool to create an unofficial home energy score. There is no difference between an official and an unofficial score. It just has unofficial superimposed on it. So if you're a homeowner that is curious about kind of performing a pre-assessment, maybe you have a contractor coming to look at your home and you kind of want to understand exactly what the measures are that they may recommend, you could use remotely to perform a pre-assessment and learn about what R levels are in your home, as well as what R levels may need to be increased to. So what your insulation efficiency is, as well as looking at the heating and cooling systems in the home. If you look kind of in this question set, it's an accordion style question set that breaks open to every aspect of the building envelope. It uses augmented reality to measure different building elements like the floor area, window area, door area, so the different fenestration products. Additionally, we have partnered with various different organizations. So someone like Inclusive Prosperity Capital, which is an offshoot of the Connecticut Green Bank, they do lending for residential energy retrofits. We've created an iteration of remotely that allows them to perform their QA/QC so that we digitize their checklist after a heat pump or solar system is put on a home. They can use remotely and collect data on the system installation details. We've also worked with SEIA, the Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance, to develop an HVAC system nameplate scanning tool that is all within the same application. It would just be a different program code that you would use, but you're able to use remotely then to scan the nameplate of a system and derive the AHRI efficiency ratings, heating and cooling capacities, and any other details that you'd want about an HVAC system. So remotely is kind of our flexible, holistic tool that we use for energy assessment, data collection, and all of that. On the right-hand side of the screen is the Vermont Home Energy Profile. VHEP was developed in partnership with Efficiency Vermont and the city of Montpelier. So in 2021, the city of Montpelier enacted a time of listing mandatory ordinance that homeowners, when they're selling their home, they have to create an energy label for their home. This is trying to, again, drive energy literacy in their community and also track building energy efficiency in the residential space. So while the tool on the left remotely is user data collected, VHEP uses various different publicly accessible databases, whether that be tax assessor records, real estate and permitting databases, home inspection data, as well as Helix, the home energy labeling information and exchange, to aggregate all publicly accessible data and pre-populate a form that then homeowners can go through and edit data as need be. If there are, let's say, you did a retrofit to your home and have a new heating and cooling system, you can add that information in. And then our automated energy model models this information and produces the VHEP report, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. This is a two-page report that provides kind of savings metrics as well as who you can go to, what are some local contractors in the area, what are some incentives that are available in the Montpelier region that you can derive savings from. These are kind of a couple of the offerings that we have on the residential side, but I'm also excited to talk about the commercial side. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I don't directly work on our commercial solutions, but I have discussed with many of my colleagues and kind of brought together some of the information about things that they work on. So I know that in Virginia right now, building performance standards are kind of a hot topic. So I guess we could kind of talk about BPS and benchmarking before we get into BEAM, the Building Energy Analysis Manager. So for reference, if you're not familiar, I'm sure everyone is, but BPS is a policy mechanism that sets performance targets based on energy usage intensity or greenhouse gas emissions that is attempting to drive building emissions reductions over a certain period of time. Benchmarking, on the other hand, would be the tracking of a building's energy usage and measuring its energy efficiency and comparing it to other buildings in that locality. So in our case, I mean, benchmarking can be done, and you can compare with building scorecards. So maybe if you're familiar with different jurisdictions that have implemented that, I know, for instance, we manage Local Law 97 in New York, and that's one of the facets of their management is energy rating of buildings. But benchmarking and BPS are great policy tools to drive change in your building stock as a jurisdiction. It provides a baseline for building owners to understand how efficient their buildings are, as well as what measures can be used and implemented to drive savings. So from a comprehensive policy scope, it kind of covers all of the different angles. We at Clearly Energy have developed Beam over the last I guess several years. Beam is built upon the seed platform from NREL. Beam serves as a comprehensive building data management platform, helping jurisdictions implement their BPS policies and track their benchmarking data. So on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you can see the Beam inventory. This would be
Well, out in Nails Fall, Leesburg, Virginia.
excuse me, I think someone's unmuted, but uh, the Beam inventory would be shown on the right-hand side of your screen. If you're a jurisdiction, this is where you track all of the different building information that you're collecting. So whether that be consumption, usage type, building type, gross floor area, conditioned floor area, any metric of that nature would be tracked there. There's mapping functionalities, data analytics, so you're able to kind of derive information and track insights from the data that you're collecting, as well as a help desk functionality where building owners are submitting tickets so that they can receive support if they have questions about what compliance with the benchmarking or BPS policy is. Currently, Beam is used by over 40 different jurisdictional partners that are small towns, cities, and nonprofits, and it manages hundreds of thousands of different buildings across the United States. So next slide. So kind of some of the lessons learned, especially from the residential side, but if there are any questions about the commercial side, I'm happy to try to speak to it. And I can also follow up if there are any questions that I can't answer. But some of the insights that we've kind of been able to derive is the fact that energy efficiency is difficult and it's complex. I think that there's a lot of moving parts. The process is fragmented, so you have contractors, assessors, program implementers, post-install requirements, incentive programs, financing programs, and they're all kind of disjointed. And I think this complexity can discourage participation and lower the initiative for homeowners to or building owners to kind of adopt retrofit measures. And so what we found is that software tools kind of paired with effective holistic policy can connect to these steps and make it easier for homeowners. So just as Charles was saying about you want your grandmother to be able to understand this kind of stuff, software solutions and effective policy married together can be a program design that helps to facilitate that. And so data tracking of this nature is critical when implementing any sort of policy. And that's kind of where we work is the data tracking and aggregation at the intersection of all of this. But excited to talk more about it in the discussion portion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate the overview of the variety of energy efficiency programs that Clearly Energy is currently working on and the interesting tools that you have available. Bring back to us back to the discussion here, and we have a little more of a round robin amongst all of our panelists. Next up, we'll have Rad Tollet, who is the principal and owner of Rad Tollet LLC. Rad, are you running your own slides, or is Rebecca?
I'm running everyone's slides.
Okay, thank you.
That'll work. Yeah. Hey, hi everybody. Happy to be here. I have a lot of slides, but only a few words on each, so I'll try to keep things going fast. But I've spent the past 6 years with a couple of different public utilities helping out with their energy efficiency programs, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about what I've been charged with, which has always been trying to bring this to life and get consumer adoption. So I'm very much the B2C message maker, or at least that's what I attempt to do, working with creative teams to bring that to life from a visual and verbal standpoint. So on the next slide, you'll see my approach. I call it the 3 Cs. It's not rocket science. Whenever I'm coming at a project like energy efficiency, I'm looking at the customer. If it's a co-op, it's obviously a member. The customer is obviously the homeowner in most cases. I have done some enterprise level stuff, but what I'll be sharing with you today is primarily residential in perspective. The competition is in quotes because since most of the energy efficiency opportunity is in a highly regulated utility world, the competition isn't necessarily somebody coming at you like Coke versus Pepsi, but it's good for us to at least take a look at what others are doing. I like to do that even in this category. And then of course there's the company. Every company has a different voice. Every company has a different relationship with their customers. It's important to take that into account with the goal of creating a Venn diagram. As a strategist, I can't have a deck without a Venn diagram. So here it is. I'm trying to find that pinpoint in the middle. And I won't give away any special sauce, but I'll share with you some stuff that I've come across over the past few years as we go here, beginning with, on the next slide, the fire hose. So there is a lot of research when it comes to the customer. I have chosen to boil it down. If we can go to what is slide 19 on my end with some bullet points. And the customer, we've in the past few years when I've been thinking about energy efficiency, I've been thinking about it across the entire mid-Atlantic. You have to obviously take into account that there are a lot of different living behaviors. We were just listening earlier about the major differences between single pane and triple pane windows. That's obviously a wonderful thing if you can even afford to have that conversation. But as you guys know, a lot of people are trying to, make sure that they keep the lights on, let alone have discussions about energy efficiency. So in a very universal set of bullets, which can obviously be distinguished between people living in rural Southeast Virginia versus the suburbs of the DMV, there's a lot of differences here, but some things ring true from the customer perspective. One is that surprisingly ritualistic behaviors are common only among half the population. And by ritualistic behavior, I mean people are turning on or turning off the light bulb when they... I can tell you that of my family of 4, it is a 50-50 split. 2 of us will turn light bulbs off. The other 2 walk out as if they will automatically shut off in the background. It's just the way people behave. It's important to take that into account because how can we try to get people to be more energy efficient if half of them are just not thinking about it? It's not necessarily a judgment call, but it is an important observation. Also, second point, price is a major factor for one-time efforts. And it's very true. And it's a direct correlation between this and as people go lower down the socioeconomic ladder, they do want instant gratification. And I've had a number of different interviews with people who are doing home energy audits in rural parts of states. And I've spoken to a bunch of directors that are in charge of these programs. And it's surprising that if they're hemorrhaging and they are due for some major insulation in their manufactured home, at the end of the day, they're looking for a quick fix because they want their bill to go down next week. So price, short-term gains versus long-term gains is really the name of the game. So we had to take that into account. That's just the motivation people have. Another thing is that awareness and perceived expense are barriers for all. When you start asking, and this is based on quant research, not just my anecdotal thoughts, when you start asking people if they're familiar with certain types of programs, and you guys are familiar with a lot of the names of what these programs might be, the answer is no. I have no idea. Now, that's not to say that they wouldn't understand the words, although demand response is confusing. We'll talk about that in a moment. But beyond that, most people understand what insulation is. Most people understand the impact that a double glazed window might have in your household electricity consumption. But there are perceived expenses, and those expenses go back to the savings issue and is a major barrier. Rebates and incentives are attractive, whereas home audits are not. The thing that I believe, and I don't want to criticize home audits because I'm a personal fan of this, but I think that it is a very big hoop to jump through for some people, or should I say tight hoop? It's very difficult to jump through this hoop, whatever the answer might be there. People like the idea of a coupon. People like the idea of an instant rebate. They like 25% off. But if they're told that they have to do homework, it is amazing how quickly people will remind you that they have other things to do, even though this should be a priority, even though they're complaining about their energy bills and they want to make a difference and they want to see immediate gratification. It is a very heavy lift for many people to go through a home energy audit. And finally here on demand response programs, everything that I'm seeing in terms of the data that I've seen, both firsthand, qualitative as well as quant, from a massive survey, is showing that there is promise to these. People see this sort of as a balancing act where there is a little bit of a lift, but not much of one. There is a perceived instant gratification or instant savings associated with it. And surprisingly, people living in households with lower socioeconomic levels are as open to this idea, if not more so. And to be completely frank, I was surprised when I saw that data and heard it firsthand, because I was thinking that there might be, at certain levels of socioeconomics, an individualistic, stay out of my house, let's call it, perspective that runs counter to what a demand response program could be perceived as, which is, I'm entering your home and regulating things for you. It seems that there is a lot of openness, even in rural parts of what are historically red states. So there's some encouragement there in what I'm seeing. If you were to summarize all of this on the next slide, I would say that we're dealing with a population that's unaware of how they can save. They want to save. They don't want to go green. They want to save green. There's a big difference there. And if, again, the goal is to try to drive energy efficiency, reduce demand because of obviously everything you guys know about with supply and demand curves, savings is the goal. How can they save? How can they get immediate ROI? That is the crux of customer. So let's go to competition. The next slide is a logo soup, as I call it. I've done a lot of work. I've looked at a lot of websites. I've done a lot of work in the Mid-Atlantic. So most of my focus is here with DE, as well as a lot of the co-ops, running from Delaware down to North Carolina. But I also have been fascinated with big dogs like PG&E. There's a lot of things that a company of that size on the West Coast can do. A lot of user experiences they can create that we can learn from. Same with Con Ed. Same with some other co-ops here and there, like Wabash Valley. There's a number of things that you guys can look at as you're poking around and asking yourselves, how am I going to communicate? If I were to boil everything down that I'm seeing, this is very subjective. This is not based on quant consumer research, but these bullet points under competition include the fact that people are figuring out that savings is more important to the customer than efficiency. What I've been preaching, what I would say that the best in class players, both at the co-op level as well as the massive regulated level of a publicly traded utility are all looking at savings as the message that they're going to be running with when they're talking to consumers. They're dabbling with demand response programs. They're trying to make them attractive. There are a couple of co-ops in the Mid-Atlantic that are using the language beat the peak. I love it. Personally, I think the idea that there's a challenge, there's a foil that I, as an individual or as a homeowner, am going to overcome is a really interesting approach. Don't quote me on this, but I believe that beat the peak is something that the co-ops who are using it would be open to allowing others to use. Others are using words like power shift. Again, there's this sense of change or control. Manage my energy is one way of using it. Manage my energy is, I'm still struggling personally with what that means. Am I telling you that you are in charge of managing my energy now? Am I giving over control, or does this imply that I am managing my energy? But you can see that there are efforts underway in trying to put demand response programs into a favorable light. If you guys all go to PG&E later, I encourage you to do so. They have cracked what I believe is a code for self-service for home energy audits. It's an elegant system. It's a user-friendly set of steps that you can go through that seems to reward and never require you to take this on. There's something interesting in play there. There are a lot of rebates. There are a lot of marketplaces. There are a lot of companies slinging their marketplaces and trying to attach themselves to utility websites where you can go in and get a discount on a LED light bulb and stuff like that. I don't have the data to say whether or not this stuff is working, but it's the short-term opportunities and the instant savings that some people are looking for. Calculators are noticeably lacking. And again, I think this goes to homework. Some utilities, including some I've worked for in the past, have been bullish on calculators. They've spent a lot of money to put together a system where you can find out how much you're spending and what are the devices in your house consuming the most electricity. It feels like homework. I'm not saying people are lazy, but they have things that they would prefer to do. And something like this feels very burdensome when put in front of people. And what proves that to be true is the lack of adoption or the lack of usage, even on websites that gain and generate thousands of views on a weekly or monthly basis. So I would say, in summary, the competition is promoting savings over efficiency. They're marketing demand response under different names, but they're still overwhelming us with options. And I think this is a really important factor to take into account. If I was working with a company that had a dozen things to offer in terms of energy efficiency programs to a consumer, I would remind them of something that I was taught when I was working for the creative director that developed the Energizer Bunny. And I always say that because it adds so much weight to his comment. I was lucky. I got to work with him for just a minute, but I remember him saying to me, somebody can only capture two things. If you throw three balls at them, they're going to drop the third. And I think that's an important thing for us to take into account. There is a wide array of options out there for a consumer, for a homeowner to jump on board with in terms of energy efficiency, but we've got to come up with the one or the two. And we can't overwhelm them with options because it'll lead to a analysis. So that leads to the company. Now, obviously, this is going to be unique for everyone. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. Cue picture of dashing utility guy. I just love this photograph from a guy who works in that. I think that utilities do a good job of photographing their people, but this one is definitely an example of a utility that did a good job of trying to capture the spirit of who they are and what they what they're trying to do for their customers. I'm saying on slide 27 here that from a company perspective, it's important that whoever we is, develop programs that can be easily deployed and make members proactive. Again, they're actually not again. I failed to mention this, but the entire state, as I may have alluded to at the top of my monologue here, is a reactive one. The consumer, 9 times out of 10, is looking for energy efficiency because they feel like they got gouged. Or if they didn't feel gouged, they feel pressure because maybe of another financial constraint that's occurred in their lives. And they're looking at their power bill saying, crap, I got to get this down by 25%. In those moments of emergency, they call the hotline or they go to the website. We would ideally like to provide them with an easy remedy for when they're being reactive, but better yet, try to get them to be proactive. And that's where that help them catch one or two things rather than throw everything in the kitchen sink at them really comes into a factor here. To get them to be proactive, we got to show them like the one thing. And so as the formula builds, and I can just jump to 30 here, I think one of the key challenges for any company that is looking to generate more consumer interest and adoption of energy efficiency programs is that we need to recognize that the member wants to save money. They desire savings more than environmental benefits. It's not to discredit the need to go green, but they want to save green first. But they're overwhelmed by the information and the options out there. They're looking for the single idea. There's the if not a silver bullet, at least a few bullets instead of multiple shotgun shells, if you know what I'm saying. And we, the company in question, whoever that might be, possibly all of you all, need to find simple ways for them to take control. What can they do to get immediate gratification, to get immediate savings? Can we start getting them to start behaving proactively? And then, of course, there's all kinds of things you could do in the future after you get them on the hook. You get them doing one thing, maybe two. They start seeing the ROI. The emotional benefits begin to steamroll, and there's a virtuous cycle, perhaps, where they are willing to do things, do more homework, doing more investigations, and hopefully you can see more and more success over time. That's all I've got. Thanks for letting me share.
Great, thanks, Rad. Really appreciate bringing kind of maybe the brand and messaging perspective to this conversation. First of all, before we move on to a moderated discussion with each one of our panelists, I do want to offer up the opportunity to submit any questions to our panelists. Please do so by placing your question in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat and can take those questions here as we receive them. But I do want to follow up, kind of start out this conversation. And Rad, I'm gonna start by leveraging kind of your closing point, and that is what I took away. You offered up that customers desire savings, that feel overwhelmed, and there's a feeling of wanting to take control of action. Those are all feeling words from what I take here, and really emotional in some nature. And I think you speak a lot about how brand strategy and messaging really is intended to approach exciting feelings and to take action. So to each one of you, energy efficiency and broader questions regarding energy considerations are complex topics to discuss. And so whether it be from messaging or from kind of programs, Jake, or how we communicate messages within the context of journalism, how do you take complex or policy-heavy energy efficiency topics or information and translate those into very specific emotional response to then lead to action? If each one of you can maybe discuss from your own perspective how you approach that kind of approach to distilling complex information.
I guess I'm happy to start us off from more of the programmatic side. I think a lot of what Rand was talking about, and then of course what Charles started out with, is something that we've experienced firsthand from a jurisdictional perspective, but also then from kind of the residential homeowner perspective, and trying to drive understanding and energy literacy among homeowners as well as building owners alike. And I think what we've found is that through software solutions, you are able to kind of be more flexible in the way that you're able to disseminate information. So whether that be in an application-based format that can be kind of teaching a homeowner what is going on in their home, building envelope aspect by building envelope aspect and providing video, imagery, as well as helpful text, can be one way of doing that. But it also, I think a lot of what we've seen is that something like a building scorecard or reporting is really crucial. So the Home Energy Department of Energy has their home energy score, their 1 to 10 standardized rating. There are other programs like BPA that are looking at their own iteration of that just drives savings. But I think any way that you can visualize savings, whether that be a bar, a chart, a graph that is simple, but also kind of gets the point across, can kind of easily facilitate what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think, yeah, Jake's program offerings provide a real good way to show the data and what can actually be realized, and measures people can take. And having the graph that you had where it was like, red, I guess, wasn't so good, and green was a lot of savings. Colors stand out and are eye-catching. I guess along with that, like personal anecdotes, again, that personal connection, I think can go a long way. I've listened to some of these rate cases and public hearings on permits and energy projects, and people will share how, like, they're in college and they just can't afford another $20 monthly bill increase. And so if there's a way to share that struggle, and then also, I guess, share your opportunity to help them, or other people who have like had to, you hear it a lot, had to make the decision between food and medication, or face disconnection. Those are absolutely gut-wrenching stories. And I think, not to profit off those, but to show that people are struggling, and this is a way to help. While giving them a chance to enact some self-control. I thought that was really interesting from Rad's perspective. A lot of these things, these new projects that are increasing bills, are in the hands of regulators. It's kind of outside your hand. You can vote, and those people can instill people to make good decisions you want, but homework may be tough. But I wonder if they would resonate with, this is an action they can take to actually get change to their pocketbook. So those are just a few thoughts.
Yeah, Rad, any further thoughts on kind of emotional connection, building up on your kind of takeaways?
Well, I'll just echo something Charles said in his presentation. I too love the challenge of how would you explain this to your grandma? I think that was what he was using. I use that one quite a bit as well. I think the energy sector, and by large, and to the same extent, the energy efficiency sector, suffers from what I would call inside baseball language. When you're talking with consumers, and I've actually worked on messaging strategies for state legislators as well, who probably have a law background. They know about as much about energy policy as the next person. Maybe they're slightly more educated, but they're not an engineer. Acronyms go in one ear and out the other. Using language that doesn't resonate with grandma is going to make your job tougher. If the goal is, especially if you're trying to drive adoption, if you get stuck on trying to explain what an adjective stands for, or what an acronym stands for, you're losing the point of the conversation, right? You're spending all your time defining what it is you're talking about, not why they should care or what they should do about it. So, I would try to humanize things as best you can. Pick your feeling.
Yeah, thank you for that. Uh,
Bill, I actually have a question for the group, if you don't
yes,
mind.
please. Yeah, please.
Um, so something that you have all touched on is the vocabulary of expertise and how to kind of move from that very technical speech to something that is more accessible. However, something that we've gotten some feedback is that balancing act between being accessible and being condescending, dumbed down, watered down. So I'd love to hear from all three of you how you would recommend walking that line to get the information across without turning off your audience.
Mm. I can start off just because I'm still unmuted. Um, it's a very good question. I would really, to give you a concrete answer, would have to look at it on a case by case basis. I will add another pithy challenge that another one of my mentors gave me many years ago, which is always respect the intelligence of your audience, which may run counter to the idea of be wary of a bunch of jargon. But I think the reason I always want to challenge people with jargon and speaking inside baseball is that explaining things with the intent of respecting their intelligence and the fact that we should assume they're a quick get, but at the same time they need to hear an explanation in words that make sense to them is I think the balancing act that I would suggest. Again, it comes down to a specific paragraph or a specific idea that's trying to be conveyed. I do know that you can, as you mentioned, easily over rotate into something that feels patronizing. But I think I think by and large, with great copy, you can get an idea across to a person who says, "Wow, that's the first time it made sense to me, and I really get it, and I want to do something about it." So that should be the charge.
Yeah, I would say I think knowing your audience is pretty key too. If you are interacting with people who are interested in being eco-friendly, then sure, maybe lean into that a little bit. If people aren't so much, they're more interested in the affordability aspect, that's obviously something to stay within when you're talking about it or keep in mind. I guess another thing in journalism that we try to practice is it's called the inverted pyramid, where you start broad and then you get more specific as you get into the story and you get more into the details. So in one sense, that could be a good way to kind of test your customer, your audience, and see how much they know. By starting broad, and if they're following you, then okay, you can kind of go down this journey with them and explaining all these topics and get more detail, and eventually get into, I guess, how many kilowatts a heat pump uses. If they're interested. I certainly don't know myself, so I would start broad, and learning about that. But I think, yeah, not really hand holding or talking down to them, but just kind of testing the water and seeing what their understanding is, what their level of understanding is a good baseline to begin with.
I would just second everything. Oh, sorry. Were you finished, Charles?
Yeah.
But I would just second everything that Rad and Charles just said. I would say the only thing that I would add, I guess, even from a program perspective and a utility-based perspective or an implementer perspective, I think the biggest thing is always asking what they hope to accomplish out of this and setting kind of level setting from that perspective and defining what their goals are. And I think once you can assess that, you're able to move forward in the context that Rad and Charles presented.
Yeah, thanks for that discussion. So we're starting to get some questions in the chat here. I'll finish out using the moderator prerogative by asking a follow-up question again to one that Brad had posed, and that is, who are the organizations who are leading in the context of messaging, either for program development or program use and uptake, or just broader awareness of energy efficiency as a savings opportunity. For each of you, the question is, who do you see? You have different perspectives across the United States, and kind of in different types of engagement with different types of utilities or programs. And who is doing this well? Who's excelling at messaging? Who would you offer up as examples for our audience to kind of take a closer look at?
I guess I could start out with this one. I think it depends on what context we're looking at this from. In a residential context, I guess someone like Montpelier, Vermont, and Vermont has been kind of at the forefront of this with their policy, time of listing ordinance. I think that's not common across the United States. I think other places like Berkeley, California would be a great place to look. But I think it is a little bit harder in the kind of residential context. I think you'll see a lot of different utility programs do have various offerings. I know, for instance, Omaha Public Power is working on something of this nature. I know um, I live in just outside of New York City, so Con Ed has different offerings. But I think in the residential sense, it takes a lot of effort and community engagement from the local jurisdiction, um, as as well
I'm sorry.
as
Sorry, guys. I totally thought.
as well as well as like maybe an advocacy group that is a member of that community. So in Vermont, you have Efficiency Vermont that is really kind of spearheading this initiative. And so I think kind of having a dual approach from public policy as well as a community-based initiative can be very helpful. In the commercial sense, I think that you look at some of your larger cities in the Northeast as being kind of successful. Most notably, Local Law 97 New York is pretty transformative, but it's in the early stages. Cambridge, a lot of towns in Massachusetts, so Mass DOER has been really great about their LBER program, which is kind of the large building energy reporting in Mass. So I would kind of look at those two as great case studies.
Obviously, there's the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council that is great at explaining everything. I go to them a lot to help decipher everything. I'll just say, like, I guess if you want testimonials on how people are dealing with their utility bills, the Virginia Poverty Law Center is really connected with folks, and might be aware of people who are struggling and facing disconnection. I guess I'll say I was at the Virginia Clean Energy Summit a couple weeks ago now, and saw a panel on municipal electricity aggregation buying opportunities, totally separate, but there was a representative from Alexandria, and then I think it was the mayor from Harrisonburg. They seem pretty competent on some of this energy stuff and being able to explain it. And of course, they're working on it every day. So I guess I would say they might be good people. And then also the State Corporation Commission has a messaging campaign that's pretty general from what I've seen and gets to the heart of affordability. So don't sleep on them.
And
Sorry
Rad,
for my interruption earlier, Jake. I had somebody. I had somebody asking when I might be available. My only additions to this list, and they feel superficial sites that were just being recommended. And when I think about it from a consumer standpoint, and I'm looking around and saying, okay, who seems to be driving adoption of energy efficiency? If you guys haven't been to Palmetto, which is, I think they originated in South Carolina, hence the palmetto, like the palmetto tree. But I think they're based out of the Bay Area now on the West Coast. If you go to Palmetto's website, you're going to see a lot of examples of a for-profit company trying to drive people to adopt energy efficiency programs. They're also, they have a profit angle. Obviously, they're looking for people to lease equipment or sign up to use them for installing that equipment. But it's a really interesting website. If you look at their website 2 years ago, which you actually can, if this might be something you need to write down, but remember Wayback Machine. If you ever want to look at the company, their communications evolved. If you go to the Wayback Machine, which is waybackmachine.com, and type in something like Palmetto, you can see what Palmetto's website looks like 2 years ago versus what it looks like today. Anybody looking at the before and after would be like, oh, they're figuring something out. They're figuring out that this category needs more energy. It needs more excitement. It doesn't need to be so cerebral. It doesn't need to look like a utility website. And that intrigues me. And I've been trying to encourage utilities to take similar tacks, because the game for communications and the visual descriptions of things that people still don't understand is elevating very quickly. And I would encourage people to go look at websites like that to say, there might be a better way for us to visualize data or present an idea or a compelling reason for you to adopt this program.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And certainly look forward to taking a look at Palmetto's experience and learning how to better communicate energy efficiency opportunities. So we have just about 6 minutes left here